Nigeria faces a major problem moving forward, and everyone needs to grab your seat and sit around the television to listen to this conversation. Of course, it's not something essentially new, but it's getting a little bit more concerning to everyone in and out of the country. Nigeria's debt could rise up to nearly 36% of the country's GDP, which is currently about $400 billion by the year 2024. That will be the year after President Buhari must have left the office. And the interest that Nigeria is paying on those debts, which is quite high, I will show you the numbers later, could be up to 74.6% of revenue. In other words, we'll be spending 74 naira 60 kobo out of every 100 naira we earn to service debts. That means we'll be left with just about 23 naira to do infrastructure, pay salaries, and do everything. That's by the year 2024. And the advice is that we need to ramp up on revenue. Of course, the finance minister, Zainab Ahmed, agreed that Nigeria does not have a debt problem. That was on Monday. But that this country has a revenue problem. So we all agree we have a revenue problem. Currently, we're doing about 7% revenue collection to GDP, one of the lowest anywhere on planet Earth. The finance minister, who's now in charge of debt, for budget and national planning, says that could go, the country plans to do about 85% by the year, in the next 4 years. That will be 2023. So this is all coming down across the same very narrow corridor. So let's talk about the business and the metrics of Buhari's economy moving forward. Paul Alaje is a senior economist at SPM Professionals and is live to us from our studios in Abuja. So let's lay in the background, Paul, as it were, as to this latest Bloomberg report just a couple of hours ago, overnight. What's your reading of this very interesting opening paragraph of the Bloomberg report that says Africa's largest oil producer could run out of money if it doesn't boost revenues urgently? Is that a statement of fact?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think the Bloomberg report is a bit charitable because it has not made provision for exchange rate risk. You recollect that before now, in 2014, Nigeria debt profile was nearly 60% or 65% of what we have today. It does not mean government has borrowed 35% of the previous debt stock, which is about 24.947 trillion naira as we speak. The implication of that is we need to spend over 250% of 2019 budget without buying anything, without paying any salary to pay back all the debt. Or if you put together the entire national budget, which includes 36 state or local government, and also the federal government, including FCT, to pay back our budget. Certainly this calls for concern. Now, what really happened? Why do we improve? Why did debt figures increase so much? Because of exchange rate risk. If Bloomberg has made provision for exchange rate risk, which of course could not be determined because it largely depends on the forces of demand and supply, and when you saw when you observe what the implication was on the Nigerian economy between 2014 and 2016, when Nigeria was in recession, from 199 to around 520 before some intervention and deliberate devaluation of currency to 305 official rate and approximately 360 at, say, interbank or parallel market before we have this figure. So when you add that to it, you'll be talking, of course, beyond 36% of GDP. Perhaps you'll be talking about 45 to 50% of GDP. So the figure is, to a large extent, very charitable. The concern, which I think we should have, which we have always had, was when the former head of IMF, talking about Christine Lagarde, mentioned that 54% of the federal revenue is used to is equivalent of what will be used to service debt in Nigeria. So it means from every 1 naira, 54 kobo will be used to service debt. And President Buhari made it very clear. Perhaps that is where the Minister of Finance and budget and national planning is relying on to say that the major problem is revenue. President Buhari said when he was presenting to the National Assembly that the biggest challenge to the Nigerian fiscal policy today is revenue generation. Now, if you generate the revenue and you are using it to service debt, certainly we still have a lot to do. The question is, how do we generate revenue? Perhaps the target of the current Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning is revenue number 1, revenue number 2, revenue number 3. not so long ago, FRS had told us that there will be introduction of 5% VAT on all online transactions. The capital market have its own fair share. Besides, we also see that the minister is saying, hey, my component subnational government, you need to pay back over 6 billion naira, over $2 billion debt, which you've collected in facility from federal government, perhaps through CBN, in partnership with Ministry of Finance. All of this is what the Ministry of Finance is saying, that you need to pay back. The question is, if we collect all this money from state, how sure are we that the state will survive the federal government repayment plan, which of course they have to do? How will they survive it? That is the question
Paul,
that begs for a lot of answer.
Yes, what you see on the screen is where we are, what are we doing? And that's the issue here, that Nigeria is going broke. The alarm is being sound. We're not broke yet, but we're going broke. Put it very charitably as you want to put it. We need to put all our hands, because those debts, as you rightly mentioned, the federal government was the big brother over the last few years to state governments. Now it looks like the big brother is also looking at his pocket and is getting lean and asking state governments to refund 624 billion naira in those loans to state governments who are still broke, by the way. Majority of them, by the way. So it looks like on both sides, this is the bird on the wire is getting unstable. For the bird is not at ease, neither the wire. So, or I have to call the line as it were. That's just one proverb, by the way. But it's a very serious issue. Now, how do you think the current President Buhari's regime should fix the problem of revenue? What reforms, what hard decisions need to be taken? On Monday, the Finance and Budget and National Planning Chief says the plan is to raise revenue to about 85% over the next 4 years. She's talking about 2023 here. How realistic is this, and what do you think the roadmap should be for Zainab and the rest of her team, the National Economic Council?
Yeah, thank you once again. I think what the ministry should be considering is a multiple approach to improving revenue and also reducing leakages and unnecessary spending. First of it will be subsidy that we spend approximately 1 trillion. If you say governors should pay back and we still use the money to pay subsidy, more or less, it's a waste. When you look at who are the people that benefit from subsidy, you can afford to buy fuel at a relatively higher price, and I think I should be able to buy a relatively higher price of what is fair. Now, the argument will be the poor will go to the street to protest. Partly, yes. But the question is, who really benefit from subsidy argument? You know, in the last regime of the Honorable Minister, she has said, federal government, we put up thinking cap to tell how they will gradually remove subsidy, which perhaps is the stone on the economy. Now, if you fix the revenue side, which is a component of fiscal policy, and you're not thinking of the expenditure price, you can generate all the revenue for we like, even 85% or 100%, but the more you generate that, if leakages in bidding is still very high by people adding all sorts of things in the bidding process, and we are not adopting electronic process for our bidding so that there is increase in transparency. Number two, if we still have huge sum we are spending on subsidy, which of course might not necessarily be, we are giving that to the, to industries for, if you are supporting or if you are subsidizing for industry power consumption, or we are subsidizing for gas consumption, energy consumption, it's reasonable. But if it's going to be for consumption directly in generators, etc., I think we need to do more in that regard. So what do we generate more revenue? First, government has mentioned possible review in VAT, I think last year or earlier this year. And we're still expecting more documentation to be released in that regard.
Paul, yes, we need to cut wastages and excesses. Perhaps we're going to beg the legislators, the National Assembly, and perhaps across state assemblies to step back on those new cars, hundreds of billions of naira they want to spend in buying new cars and all of that. But again, we need to get something done as a game changer here. Over the last 4 years, we've had certain discussions around Perhaps we should sell down on some state assets. We should ramp up on some form of privatization and what have you to bring in the big ticket money in here that we sorely need and very urgently. So do you think we can search for and find that game changer very quickly here?
Yeah, definitely. We need a lot of fresh game changer in the country. And for me, my advice would be we need external injection of fund and investment to the economy. When you look at the foreign direct investment or foreign investment to the country until last quarter where we have meaningful improvement, it went really down. Perhaps because of uncertainty over what election result will be and what the outcome of post-election will be. The increment we have now is still not substantial enough. What we've studied in organization over the years for countries that have succeeded relatively well compared to countries that are struggling with their revenue has been the environment created for investors to come. So for me, I think minister, along other ministries, talking about the Minister of Education, Minister of Power, Works, etc., must work together as a team to ensure that macroeconomic indicators that affect Nigeria is better than what we have 4 years ago, better than what we have 12 years ago together. When we have such indicators, we can have more revenue. And the thing government could do right now are those things that would together improve revenue and at the same time reduce expenditure. Now, when we say we want to increase taxation, it's fine. But the question is, we cannot overtax by saying we want to improve taxation. We first need to look at the culture of the people, and we come in, we might want to use the approach of, say, improving taxes gradually so that it doesn't come overnight, and that may have implication on jobs. The truth is, if we continue to increase government part of taxation in national income, while expenditure is government expenditure is relatively the same, we're still using debt to finance expenditure, and which is not as much as taxation. We are going to see GDP shrink, which may also lead us back into recession of some sort.
Paul, a quick one here is you're doing taxation, you're raising revenue, you need to stimulate the economy. It's like a cattle. You need to feed it. You need to nurture it to give you the amount of milk you want. That's how it works. Nothing comes out of nothing. You're going to get water out of stone. I don't know how you're going to squeeze it. So how do we stimulate the economy to generate the kind of revenue that we need moving forward very quickly? Well, you need to put something in my mouth for me to give you something out.
Yeah, this is what is required for us, is we need to give actually to the economy. Of course, tax revenue is very important. We need to generate revenue, but we need to give to this economy. Why we need to give to it is what unemployment figure is saying right now and what growth of 2.08% is saying. Unlike what ERGP has said, Nigeria will see between 2019 to 2020 between approximately 7%. The growth rate compared to what we have right now, and population growth rate is about 3%. So we need to generate more revenue, and government has all manner of windows to do that. I've mentioned gas that is played within Niger Delta region, which of course the taxes on that is relatively low and has encouraged more of that to continue within the country. Also, those who are relatively wealthy in Nigeria compared to those who are less privileged, we might need to collect a bit more from them in order for government to have such revenue. The question is, what will be the justification for this revenue at the end of the day if government collects more? How will people perceive? Will people still be providing power for themselves? Will people still be providing water for themselves? Will people still be the contractor, the people constructing their roads? When people remain local government of themselves, I think they will ask questions from their state governor,
okay, the
from
final
their local
question.
Government chairman, and of course,
the final question to you, Paul, how difficult are the decisions that President Buhari currently face moving forward? This is his final lap. My question, Paul, what difficult decisions, or how difficult are the decisions that President Buhari faced during this last term in office, 4 years?
Sorry, I didn't get your question very well.
Yeah, the last question is, what hard decisions the President Buhari faced in his final term in office? 1 minute.
Okay, so President will need to take decision that will support revenue generation, which will come from different angles, and perhaps the president will also need to take decision of releasing businesses that government is doing. Mr. Sunday Dare is the Minister of Youth and Sport. I'm expecting that some of those stadia that we have all around the country, we may look for some private sector persons that can take them over and perhaps invest in them, and also some refineries that we have that we carry out turnaround maintenance. Every 3 turnaround maintenance is equivalent of building new one. We might need to look at how to release some of these things, or perhaps find JV to allow for more financial injection to the economy, which will reduce government expenditure on most of these things that government spend that, of course, we can do without them.
Okay, Paul, thank you so much. We appreciate your coming in and weighing in on these very important and timely issues at the moment as far as the future of Nigeria's economy is concerned under the present administration. Thank you so much, Paul Alaje from Abuja Studios.
Thank you so much, Father.
Paul is a senior economist at SPM Professionals. Did you ever think that the UK Parliament could be suspended? Now, the story out of the UK saying that the government at number 10 Downing Street under Boris Johnson may be asking Queen Elizabeth to suspend the Parliament from meeting when they resume from their recess in October, all as part of the disorderly Brexit, the bandwagon untangling before October the 31st. My colleague from our London studios, Juliana Olayinka, is tracking that very big breaking news for us here this morning. Juliana, this is how as big as it can get. Is it ever imaginable that the Parliament could be suspended?
Well, it was always a possibility, and Bosun, the race to stop a no-deal Brexit has intensified. Downing Street have just actually confirmed that, yes, indeed, they have asked the Queen for permission to suspend Parliament. What this means is that next week, when Parliament returns after their summer-long recess, they'll be sitting for 2 weeks, and then there will be a month of suspension where the Queen will then, on October the 14th, deliver basically the government's domestic plan, which leaves little to no time to debate a no-deal Brexit. Yesterday, there was that gathering of opposition MPs at a quite symbolic meeting at Church House, where they were basically trying to stop this. But of course, Boris Johnson was much faster, much quicker, and he's actually asked for a suspension of Parliament. You can imagine that the reactions have been furious, and they've been coming in thick and fast. One MP has described this as an attempted coup. Another has called it an affront to democracy. Lib Dem MP Chukwu Amuna has described Boris Johnson this morning as a Tin Pot dictator. And Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland, has said this is going to be one of the darkest days in British history. Of course, there'll be more reactions throughout the day. But I must say it has taken some people, including Boris Johnson's own cabinet ministers, quite surprised. Why? Because, of course, last week he had that discussion with Angela Merkel in Berlin, and Angela Merkel said for the first time that the EU would be willing to reopen those negotiations if indeed within 30 days Boris Johnson could find an alternative to that contentious backstop, which is what he says he needs to be taken out of the withdrawal deal. So there seemed to be a sentiment that Boris Johnson and the Conservatives would indeed be working towards finding a deal. But yesterday he had a phone conversation with the EU Commission Chief Juncker, and he told him categorically that there would indeed be no alternative to taking out that backstop. If there is no alternative to that, there'd be a no deal. So the breaking news keeps rumbling on. Disorderly Brexit, as you say, Bosun. Yes,
it's a disorderly Brexit. Now, the pound sterling is getting knocked by that this morning. Any check of what's happening to the sterling? It's not such a sterling, this performance this morning.
Well, the sterling yesterday had gained on the dollar, but at the moment, you can imagine the city is going absolutely crazy. I suppose we'd have to check in really at intraday if we can, purely because it keeps on moving every single minute. They had been looking further away from home, including what's going on in Hong Kong, to determine just how the stock market is flaring up. But now that this announcement has taken place, yes, I must say, city traders are waiting anxiously, as the British public are.
Yes. I'm sure a bit of unsettling markets across board. Thank you so much, Juliana Olayinka from our London studios, my colleague there. Thank you so much. Keep an eye on the Brexit train, whatever it lands. We'll come back to the Nigerian market when we return after the break. 2 minutes, everyone.